Right. Welcome. Hello. Welcome back to another live with Prandada Prim on YouTube and Facebook. I'm so excited to have Desiree here. But before we go in and have her introduce herself, let's give people a few minutes to come on. I'm like ready to do a little happy dance.
I'm so proud.
I'm excited because you're a sex therapist and I just have a thing with sex therapists. Like, I'm like, maybe I should go to school and get a whole nother degree to become a sex therapist as well, as if I don't have 50 degrees.
Learning never hurts, but you do the integration piece so well, and you go places that we cannot.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. So,
I want to trade
so
places with you.
yeah, that's the thing. Is like, yeah. So anyway, we got people coming on. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited. Hello, Raining Woman. She's here for it. Hey, hey, hey. I love Raining Woman. She's a poet. She's always on. I just subscribed to her channel and it's been some great stuff. Thank you for constantly coming back. So I have Desiree here, who is a sex therapist. I'm so excited because we're going to be talking about sex, relationships, all kinds of goodies. So, Desiree, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself,
I
please?
shall. Hello, everybody. So, my name is Desiree Robinson, and I am a Maryland based sex therapist, meaning that I get to spend most of my days talking with people about how to improve their sex life, improve their relationships, and just feel ooey gooey and juicy all over. And so,
Ooh.
it's a true mission that somebody has to do it. And so, yeah, I'm just excited to be here and chat with everybody. And let's talk about relationships and COVID or whatever comes up.
Yes, I like that. You know what I do want to say, because before the other Renee, I'm going to say Renee because now I'm Prandada, but I used to be a psychotherapist. So Renee used to be a psychotherapist dealing a lot with couples. I did a lot of relationship work as well, but it was a traditional psychology, right? Traditional psychotherapist. But now I get to have these juicy conversations about sex, about relationships. And because I also work with Tantra, I get to teach people how to have pleasure. Like I teach people how to have tantric sex. I teach people how to give tantric massage to their partner or to themselves. And it's just been great. So I'm like, I could never go back to the old Renee. It's like Prandada here. Like it's so funny because my sister will call me and be like, you need to go back to doing psychotherapy. You know how many people need you right now and they're depressed. I'm like, girl, do you know how many people need to have orgasms right now? But anyway, I'm about to digress on this. The topic is relationships.
Please digress.
Topic is relationships during COVID. I might digress a little bit later. But before we get on, I do want to say to people, thank you guys for coming on. If you have any questions about, COVID, about relationships. So one of the things that we've been seeing a lot is during this COVID, there's been increasing issues within relationships, increasing domestic violence, increasing calls to divorce lawyers. So we're going to get into all of that and get into how to keep your relationship sane. And if you're not with a partner, if you don't have a partner, how to keep yourself sane. Because our first relationship is with ourselves. And so we forget that a lot of times. But before we go into that, Desiree, I really want to hear how did you become a sex therapist? What made you become a sex therapist?
Oh, I was destined to become a sex therapist, truly. And so I say that because I grew up, I'm a Maryland girl through and through, born and raised, but I spent a lot of time in DC in school and family. And I went to Catholic school from first grade to 12th grade, right? So there was this infrastructure of religion, and nobody was talking about sex. Like nobody was even saying you shouldn't have sex or you should or what to do. And so
Mhm.
backdrop of Northeast DC. And every time something was on the radio or I was in a store or something provocative showed up, I just noticed this shielding, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so of course when you're young, and it's like, why can't we talk about this? Or the subject switched. I want to know more. So
Mm-hmm.
since I'm
Yeah.
12 years old, it's been in my head that I want to be a sex therapist. I want to learn more. I want to hear more. And I have friends who can vouch for that. For me, it's been trial and error with other career choices academically, but I think I landed where I was supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
and it's truly my pleasure, especially when you have the backdrop of trauma, intergenerational healing, pleasure research. There's so many domains that I get to fall into culture. And so
Mm-hmm.
sex is how it shows up, but it's truly how I get to interact and learn about people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a good point because it's through sex. Honestly, sex is just connected to everything, and so a lot of times when people think about sex, you're thinking of the actual act of sex, penetration,
Yeah.
and there's so much more to this, And my mission really is to get rid of this taboo about sex, about sexuality, and get people to feel more comfortable to talk about these different topics that can be so difficult. That people are like hiding to talk about it, or they're afraid to bring up all of
Yeah.
these different things, and it's so important to be able to just be open and have conversations. And the more we do, the more we get to know ourselves, the more we get to know other people. So I really liked what you said. And just thinking about another piece as well, when something is just like forbidden, it makes you want to do it. And so it's like, for you, it made you want to become a sex therapist, but
Mhm.
for other people, a lot of kids, a lot of times it makes them just want to go out and have sex. And like, what is this thing that adults, like don't do this hush hush. So it
Yeah.
makes them want to go experience it faster. So as opposed to like really protecting our kids and teaching them how to be responsible, it actually puts them in a situation where they can't be responsible because they're going out and out of shame, out of guilt, they're hiding and they go do something, but they're not more than likely they're not going to talk to you as an adult, as a parent, because of that shame. So they might be in a situation where one, they're being abused, or two, they're not protected. They don't know about protection, condoms, and different things like that. So these are things that we really need to be able to openly talk more about. And we did have a question here. Is there a specific age that someone should seek a sex therapist?
I don't think so. I think if there's the
Hmm.
thought to seek a sex therapist, then you should seek a sex therapist. I've seen as young as early teens. My
Hmm.
practice focuses more so on adults and couples.
Hmm.
However, there are plenty of people who are in doctors' offices who are talking because of all the things we just mentioned. So
Hmm.
sometimes the sex therapist or the therapist who's well versed in sex is the one who can intercept a lot of issues with children, young adults, as opposed to it becoming a real problem down the line.
Hmm. I completely agree with what you said. Completely agree. Now, the majority of my practice as well has been adults, but I have had one kid, she's not a kid, but she was like 19, who came to me because she was really worried that something was wrong with her because she wasn't feeling, she was feeling asexual, and she was like, I don't have any desire, I haven't had sex yet, I'm in college, so there's something wrong with me. So, so even at that age, at 19, you know if you're feeling like you need to do sex therapy, do sex therapy. So yeah, I wouldn't say any specific age, but it's just what you're feeling. Like Desiree said, if something is coming up and you're feeling like maybe I need to talk to someone, maybe something might not be right with me, so that you can understand, because again, we don't have these conversations. So sometimes everybody develop differently. So one person at 13 years old might have raging sex hormones, and they want to have, sex with everything that they see, everybody that they see, and
Yep.
another person not until they're 19, 20 years old. And so a lot of times we don't realize that we're normal, that maybe, we're in different stages, until
Yeah.
you start talking to someone. And so It's important. Yeah. Sometimes, like I have some family members, when they've been like 18 or something and they've come to me, ask me a question, I'm open and honest and I'll talk to them, So I think that at any age that someone is questioning, we should definitely be able to have just a conversation in general, you know,
Yeah.
kind of diverging from the sex therapist, but the conversation. Yeah.
I would also point out that most sex therapists, it sounds salacious what we do.
Hmm.
And there are people who do different jobs in the arena of sex and intimacy, but we are primarily therapists first, right? So
Hmm.
I work with a variety of things. I happen to specialize where I want to specialize, which is sex and intimacy. So sometimes we have these issues that show up as issues or problems in our sex or relationship lives. And so a therapist is a person who can see if there's underlying depression? Are there some
Hmm.
hormonal things? I'm going to advocate for you to talk to your doctor. So many people are
Hmm.
not talking to their doctors, and a lot of people do have hormonal issues, congenital issues, mood disorders that are just going to keep tearing in.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, I'm bad, I'm wrong, why isn't this working? And it's like, oh, well, we have to help unlearn some of the things and then
Hmm.
relearn some other really great things. And so I don't cap the age because we forget that sometimes young adults and teenagers are not little adults, right?
Hmm.
They still have to be provided a backdrop for growth. And that is something that a lot of times it's neglected.
Right, right. I hear an echo, so I'm sorry. I'm like pausing because I'm hearing echo on my end. I think it's my something going on with my thing. So, yeah. And so, what are some of the things in general? So, you were saying as a sex therapist, when I was talking to you beforehand, a lot of the clients that you work with are couples. Explain a little bit more about who you work with, your population,
I would say
what you
it's about
see.
50-50 couples and singles. And so a lot of my work is when people come in and there's some sort of issue or something is wrong. And so that could look like we're not happy, we have different desires, one wants sex more than the other. But it could also mean if it's a single, well, I don't orgasm, I don't know how to orgasm. And so that brings on a whole list of questions for me where it's like, well, but what is sex? What is orgasm? Like, where do we get these ideas of how we should show up in a sexual space? And how do we see if that is from some sort of external knowledge that we've been told, like, this is how you should have
Hmm.
sex, as opposed to are we discerning for ourselves what we
Hmm.
want, what brings us pleasure, like you're talking about. But first, we have to get to the idea of self identity and
Hmm.
desire and permission and ownership of our bodies. And that's a big, big part of my work is just supporting people in
Hmm.
being honest.
Yes.
Rude.
Yes.
Mhm.
And that's so important because I work with a lot of women too, that have not connected to their bodies. Like they don't know what they want, they don't know what they enjoy. And historically, a woman's body has been for their partner. So it's like, sex ends when my partner, if it happens to be a male partner, ejaculates.
Yep.
When he wants to have sex, okay, I need to be available and have sex. Like it doesn't matter what I want. Majority of the women, have sex the first time, not because they wanted to. Not all women, but there's a good amount of women who have sex not because they wanted to the first time, but because they got pressured into it from the boy. It was this guy they were dating, they liked him, and he's like, "Yeah, let's have sex," and she's like, "Well, I'm not really ready." And then, then he's like, "Oh, but come on, I love you," and saying all these different things, and
Oh,
exactly what she wants
that's
to hear.
nice. That's old school.
Yeah.
You
Now,
say,
not even
like, if you
anymore,
don't do
right?
it, somebody else will. Swipe culture.
Right, right, exactly. And so that's the other piece. Okay, if I don't have sex with him, someone else will.
Mhm.
But that's not even true because if he wants to have sex with someone else, he's gonna do it regardless of whether you're having sex with him or not. You know, so
Yeah, it's a value, right? And that's one thing that I think women it comes really hard earned to learn to value ourselves in a way where we are almost irreverent of ourselves, as opposed to we're still striving for equality in so many ways. And forget about equity, like we're still trying. And so to be able to say, yeah, you really don't need this guy for your self-esteem to be okay. Like that is not foreign, but it's like an aha moment. And it doesn't
Mhm.
surprise me, but it's just like, yeah, so many downloads just with having someone else, sometimes another woman, me, to be able
Mhm.
to say, but why do you need that? What does that do for you? Does
Yeah.
that heal you? Does that pleasure you? And usually it's a no. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, what are some of the things that you could, that would help you to understand? Like, okay, so you said usually it's a no. Is there something that a person could see beforehand to know, what that person might say or feel? Does that make
Right. Yeah.
sense?
They give you all some insider secrets. Everybody will be
Yes, yes.
right. So this is one of my favorite questions that I ask to couples, but also individuals. It's very simple. How do you show up to sex?
Hmm.
Really simple, right? Because when I say, well, how do you show up for a job interview? What might you say? Come early, you're dressed
Yeah,
appropriately, you're professional.
right.
If you're going to a concert, you have your ticket ready and you've done all the research. But when I say, how do you show up to sex? It's like, anxious,
Yeah.
uncertain. I just show up. So I think
Okay.
even the idea of being able to be present for sex is absent. And once we can name that and be super transparent about what is showing up, we can do some real work with that. We can find some different strategies to say, oh, anxiety and sex don't mix.
Hmm.
They don't go
Right.
well together, right? But first we have to just say, how do I actually show up in a space where sex happens, where intimacy happens, where I am most likely my most vulnerable with someone else? And do I understand that? Right? Do I
Hmm.
understand if this is a casual relationship? Romantic exchange is not going to be reciprocated, even though it looks like that, it feels like that. Our body is reinforcing that. It's not that. And
Hmm.
it's not a
Hmm.
judgment. It's just, are we aware?
Yeah. And I like what you said, how do we get to that point of being vulnerable? Because when you're showing up, you do have to be vulnerable, right? So how do you get to that point?
Mm. You know, it's so cute because I was reading a book for a hypnosis follow-up refresher I'm doing, specific for sexological hypnosis. And the book writer was describing four different kinds of sex. And so he says there's solo sex, there's mechanical sex, there's casual sex, and committed sex. And I'm like, I like a good category
Yes.
for me to break down. And he was explaining the difference between casual sex and committed sex is intimacy. And the
Hmm.
need for intimacy is vulnerability, you know?
Hmm.
And what is vulnerability? It's a reason why a lot of people look at it as a weakness per se, because you're required to really reveal so much of yourself.
Hmm. And that's
And
scary.
isn't it?
Yes.
Because now you have to hope and pray that this person is going to hold you in the way that you need to be. And a lot of people are not discerning the partner
Hmm.
needs to be able to hold you at that level. And that's a
Yeah.
personal responsibility that is really hard to learn, especially if you don't have the best templates for that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so moving on to like relationships during this COVID, right? There's so many people. I've spoken to so many people who actually end up moving into each other because it just kind of happened during this COVID, this quarantine. They like
Mhm.
literally just started dating, and then next thing you know, they're living together,
Yep.
right? So there's so many different types of situations like that. Then you have relationships where people might have been together for years and years and years, and it's a great relationship, but then COVID came, and now they're actually spending more time with each other than they ever actually really have,
Yep.
because now they're not going to work. So now they're with each other 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's like now they're like, oh my God, I can't stand this person, you know? Now, there's some relationships where like, oh my God, I love this person and I can't believe it. I realize, you know, we're so great. And I know for sure now I want to spend every aching moment with you. You know, we could make it through this, we could make it through anything. And there's others like, oh my God, I want to kill her, or I want to kill him. You know, so what is it that you're seeing? Like, what do you think it is that's happening that's making these people, maybe I kind of already said a little bit, but like, what else do you think is happening that's making these relationships just kind of, you know, go crazy during COVID, you know, for some people?
Yeah, what I try to remind all my people is that we are in a very unnatural and weird situation already, being in our homes for months. And some people aren't going out at all, right? So we have to provide the backdrop that there's something really off happening and we're all
Yeah.
adjusting.
Right.
And then, like you said, some people have found pod or nesting partners, and some people are already in relationships. And what I see is this bifurcation of sorts because for some folks, before I say that, inherently in relationships, when there's conflict, it's going to bring up your stuff. You can have stuff for days, but it's just you interfacing with the world. But the second you have a partner and you all are interfacing with each other, it enhances all of your stuff, good, bad, or other.
Yeah.
And so being in this backdrop situation with this person that maybe you've been able to distract or take in doses. And so not only are you face to face with your own stuff, but you have to deal with that person's stuff too, depending on how well they're managing it. You know, so if before you were like, oh, they really just irritate the crap out of me, but you could go to work and you can go to happy hour and you took them in small doses. Now you only have 2 rooms. Oh, where are you gonna go?
And the four walls around you.
And that's a luxury, 2 rooms for some people. And being able to say there's only so many Zoom calls, there's only so many ABC XYZs. And so in my head, it's an invitation, right? It's an invitation to settle into what's showing up and how much of it is actually reasonable or feasible to navigate in this moment, right? Conversely, I had some folks who I was seeing weekly, and eventually in quarantine, I'm like, maybe we can take a break. Because a lot of the issues that were happening because of traffic and commuting, now that they were together, it was just like they were already good friends. They already had a good dynamic, but they had too many distractions in their world. And so there is a third category of people, and it's the busy people. So whether they were working out of the home, in the home, they're too busy to do anything. And those are the toughies because it's like, yeah, at some point in time, you have to do something different. Like you have to make a real intentional choice to do something different. And so all across the line, it comes back to that concept of how well do you know yourself? How honest are you with yourself? And how much recognition can we give to the fact that there's a real exchange happening as opposed to I'm bad, you're bad, this is horrible, etc. The judgments we place. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. That makes great sense. How well do you think that people actually know each other? You know, as I'm hearing you say that, and I'm like, I'm gonna give away my age, people. So I'm 45 years old, right? But I know I don't look it. I know I look like I'm like 28.
Really though.
Thank you. You know, black don't crack. But you know, it's funny because you know, I could honestly say, like, even my 20s, my 30s, I didn't know myself. You know, even up into my late 30s, you know, and it wasn't until my early 40s where I could really say, okay, this is what I want. This is who I am. And I'm not putting up with any other shit. You know what I'm saying? It's either, you know, and so and so sometimes I think people feel, you know, people are like in their 20s or still even in their 30s. And do they have their identity yet? Do they know who they are? Do they know what their purpose is? Like, I mean, I look at even from when I was 30, I changed so much now. You know, I'm a completely different person.
You're
So
an
what
evolved version of yourself.
yes, more evolved. You know, so what's that process like? For me personally, I went through my process of doing a sabbatical. I did a year sabbatical.
Mm.
And then after that year sabbatical, I did intense work on myself. I left the US at 35 to do work on myself, to do the sabbatical. And then, 10 years later, after doing, like, I lived in a tantric commune, doing tantric meditations, tantric yoga daily, seeing a right therapist who also works with relationships and sexuality here in Brazil.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I've done the work and it's been like consistent. But what's one of the things that you recommend for people to do to really get to know themselves where they're at? Because, you know, for you to be your best and show up whole in a relationship, you need to be whole for yourself. You need to show up for yourself. So how do we get to that point where we're showing up for ourselves, where we do the work to know who we are? That's a whole lot.
It is, and I don't want to play favorites, but I love working with my single people because this is the work that we get to do. We do relationship stuff, but again, relationships will show you your stuff. So you have to experience relationships, but you also have to do it because it draws up all that stuff, right?
Right.
And so, one activity that I have a lot of people do is to create an ad for your ideal lover, right? If there were no restrictions, what would that look like? So, first, we just give space to dream, to desire, to do things. And then
Mhm.
on the opposite end, it's okay. If that person was out there, are they looking for you?
Mhm.
You have
Mhm.
to,
Yeah.
and it sounds maybe a little harsh, but realistically, we have to say, am I living on the high level that I desire? If I want to attract all of these things, am I moving that way too? And so then we
Mhm.
have to say, all of the message, how do we speak to ourselves about ourselves? And in recognition that sometimes there's a soundtrack in the background that you
Mhm.
either inherited from family, or you could have had the best family in the world, but maybe you had an awkward body, or maybe you were socialized a certain way with friends. And so that's another soundtrack, and then a crummy relationship. It just keeps building. And at some point in time, we have to say, how do I take back my voice? And how do I really regulate what I own? And
Mhm.
that is tough for some people to really get into that language and get into that ideology that I get to make decisions. People are very disempowered and they're also
Mhm.
very lonely. So it's easy
Yeah.
to hop into relationships where somebody else regulates and makes the rules. And so it seems like we're in this dynamic, and really you're giving your power away to somebody else.
Mhm.
Right? Like you said, this is what I want and I accept nothing less. And so when I'm
Right.
working with people, I'm like, look, you're dating, have fun. Have
Mhm.
fun. It shouldn't be heavy when you're dating in the beginning. If it's heavy, hop out.
Mhm. Right.
Hop
Exactly. I
out.
agree. I
Just
agree.
flirt. Have fun. See
Right.
how it feels to flirt. See how it feels to be in the midst of pleasure and do some pleasure research. But that's things that
Mhm.
we're not taught to do because we're taught to play as kids.
Yeah.
And even earlier now, we're taught that you have to get grades and you have to do da da da. And we lose the ability to play as adults.
Mhm. So true.
Get it back.
And I think even if you're in a relationship, you should do that same thing. Especially now during COVID, is getting back to that play. And I follow Osho, who's a crazy guy, crazy guru from India, and but that's one of the things that he talks about is playing, like being childlike again. And he always says the more serious you are, the more like a corpse you are. And it's so true. Like we've gotten out of that play. We've got to be serious, serious, serious.
Yeah.
So even within your relationship. So right now, what can you do differently? We're in this COVID. Things are stressed. Like you said, Desiree,
Yeah.
there's a backdrop. There's so many different things that's unnatural that's happening right now. Things that we never thought of would happen. Things that
Ever.
were unplanned.
Ever.
Whether you can't leave the house, you have anxiety, you have fear.
Yeah.
There's so many different things, and now you're having issues in your relationship, or now you're like, okay, how can I save my relationship? So I
Mm.
think I love what you said about play.
Yeah.
And I think incorporating that into your relationship, incorporating that until now. Okay, what can I do now to have pleasure? How can we take, advantage of this time right now that we have and do something different? How can we explore this relationship differently? How can we explore our bodies differently? How can we explore so many different things, you know?
Yeah, I was thinking like 3 different dissertation questions, but they're all good. They're all good,
Right.
right?
Uh-huh.
Easiest way I can say it, number one, quality time, right? We spend a lot of proximal time with each other, but we don't spend quality time. And one of my sex therapy supervisors, she was explaining that quality time happens like this, right? Even though this is the internet, I'm making eye contact with you, right? If we're in each other's presence, no screens, nothing like that. We're just face to face connecting because
Yeah.
that's how attachment happens. And not to be a therapy geek, but I'll be a therapy geek. When we talk about attachment, it's how we learn to be secure and safe in relationships from a very young age, pre-verbal, right?
Mhm.
And so we all have different styles based off of our parenting, our nurturing. And we
Mhm.
bring that into relationships. We bring that into friendships, and it's how we judge security. It's how we
Mhm.
have these preconceived notions about, can I trust you? Should I trust you?
Mhm.
Again, this is pre-verbal, and it can be ameliorated or remedied by being very intentional about saying, I want to learn to get close to you. I want to surveil what shows up for me. But it only happens when you create the time. And
Right.
spoiler, there's always time.
There's always time.
There's no So that's another
Yeah,
thing. Really look at your life. What are you doing? How much TV do you watch? For sure,
exactly.
on Sundays and Mondays, I'm all into 90 Day Fiance. I will admit that. But but other days, I have plenty of time to connect and engage. And I like to be intentional about setting that aside for people who are of
Mhm.
value for me. And we don't do that. We
We
just
don't
kind
do that.
of we invade a lot, actually.
Yeah. And today, even today in this day and age, because we're all on social media, so we feel like, oh, we know what such and such is doing. You know, we know how such and such is feeling. So we don't take that time to call. How many people call now? No one calls anyone. Like
Yeah.
it's so funny because I'll call someone and then they won't answer, and then they'll send a text. And they're like, oh, I wasn't expecting a call. And I'm like, well, are you free? What are you doing? Like, why didn't you answer the phone? And then,
I'm
you know,
like,
I had someone say, oh, well, I don't like talking on the phone anymore. I just prefer texting. And so we've gotten out of that. And so, you know, we have this false idea that we are in people's lives and we're knowing what people are doing, but we don't.
yeah.
We're not connecting anymore. And each day is getting harder and harder to form these connections, this attachment. And like you said, you know, a lot of the work that I do as well is the eye gazing, making that eye contact and touching more. We don't touch. The only time we touch is when we're ready to have sex. It's like, can we touch outside of that too? Like, you know, maybe you can just put your hands on me. Like, you know, like it doesn't have to be something so romantic, but maybe we're sitting down and you have your hands on my knees or you have my hand, you know, and that's one of the things that Brazilians do really well. I live here in Brazil and they touch a lot. And
Yes.
so I realized how touch deprived we are as Americans. Because when I first got here, they were touching me, and I was like, "Why? Why do you keep touching me? Like, what's wrong with you?
Off of
Like, we're
me.
sitting down. You get like back up. You haven't you heard of personal bubble? You're
No.
like all up in my personal bubble." And so, and that's and that's a good point. So in the States, we have that whole thing, personal bubble. You have to stay 6 feet away from people.
Today, yes. Please. Please.
Please today for the
But before
COVID,
that,
right? But even
before
before that, like you had this whole, personal bubble,
yes.
personal space, and it wasn't. It's a thing that really keeps us from connecting,
Mhm.
And so it wasn't until after living here, and I tell you, when I lived in the Tantra commune, we would give each other hugs, and it would be like over 3 minutes, like
Yes.
literally, like the whole
The
song.
last.
Yes, and I would, but at first I was just like, oh my God, like I started getting anxious. I was like, I gotta get out, I gotta get out. But now we're hugging and we're holding, and I begin to melt, and I feel good, and I could feel my oxytocin levels going up. I'm feeling that pleasure. I'm feeling happy. My endorphins are rising.
Yeah.
So, and this is what makes us connect to our partner or friends or family or whoever. So I think these are important things to bring in, the eye contact, like you said, and touching more.
Yeah. Even a 6 or 10-second hug to start. Um, I hear a lot of it's awkward. A lot of the work that I do, it's
Oh,
awkward, and so
I've heard.
I have to make the PSA like it's going to be awkward at first. It's going to
Yeah.
feel awkward. It's going to feel sterile, like too many words, because it's a new skill set for the desired outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a new skill set. You have to be able to say the way that I'm doing things isn't getting what I want. So that doesn't mean you can't get what you want. It means we have to try it differently. And in the beginning, it is awkward, but that's okay. Lean into
Mm-hmm.
it, But I think
Yeah.
that that personal space comment was really important because when someone invades your personal space, it feels like your safety is compromised
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And we do that all the time on an emotional level. We have these invisible shields up and
Mm-hmm.
we have to say, how do we let that down? And how do we be
Right.
discerning with who we bring in and invite them in?
Right. Right. I think that's important. And so at the same time, so on the flip side, we were talking about the whole sex as exchange or like an energy exchange. So we're talking about, so on one side, the whole making yourself vulnerable, connecting, touching, eye movement, which is all energy. It's all an energy exchange. But
Mm-hmm.
on the flip side, you have a whole thing of when you're angry and then you have that sex out of anger.
Yep.
I know so many couples who they'll like sometimes just fight on purpose, not consciously,
Mm-hmm.
but to have that makeup sex. And they said, that angry makeup sex is so good. I've been there, done that, and it is good, because you got all that passion, you got all that emotion, and you're
Yeah.
going. But what do you have to say? What are your thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. I think I don't want to ever say that something is bad or wrong, right? I
Right.
think it just invites an awareness. Like, do you
Mm-hmm.
understand that you are consciously inviting your nervous system to go full force in order to have this sexual exchange? And
Mm-hmm.
does that help? Like, if that's how y'all roll and afterwards everything's copacetic, maybe that works for you. More
Mm-hmm.
often than not, it doesn't. It's how people have associated caring or love. And so they do it, but they're caught in this cycle and nothing's ever resolved.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
It's just kind of there. And then you still have the stuff piled on. And what happens later on is it leads to dysfunction.
Yeah, or somebody or one of the partners blow up, because it's just like it's building up, it's building up, building up. Nothing is getting resolved, and the next thing you know, somebody's snapping.
Yep.
It's like, what happened? We've been having some great sex, but like,
But
what happened?
that goes back to the definition. What is sex? Is it
Mm-hmm.
penetration or is it where I get to be close to you? Is it exploitation? Is it quid pro quo? Like we all come to the table wanting something, but like you said, we're not always conscious of it.
Right, right.
And nobody's taught to be conscious of it either. People are rarely taught that, hey, when you have sex with someone, maybe da da da, we're given these fairy tale messages about everything. And
Right.
people are just learning as they go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to say real quick again for those who are coming on, thank you guys for coming on. Thank you for being here. I'm here with Desiree Robinson, and Helen says hi, Desiree.
My mom.
How's your mom? Oh, hi. Hi, mom. So, I see people on here. If you have questions, those of you who are on Facebook or YouTube, have questions, please ask. Now's your chance to ask. We got a sex therapist, a tantric therapist here. We're talking about relationships during COVID, relationship with yourself. We're here to answer. So let us know what questions you have. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe and hit that notifications bell so that you can receive the notifications for my upcoming videos and things like that. So this has been good so far. This has been really good so far. And I think it's good to, just bring this awareness to to being conscious about sexuality, because we're not. And I love what you say about being intentional, about being conscious.
Mhm.
And so I also want to say, midway, I like to kind of say if you, want to keep in touch with Desiree, you can find her. She has a website, DesireeNRobinson.com, and her IG is sexologist_Desiree. So be sure to add her, follow her on Instagram, and check out her website. She's great. I'm loving this conversation.
I'm loving having it. It is. I'm like this all the time.
Yes.
I'm more than happy to chat and just to have people get really, really clear that you can have good sex, good relationships, and not compromise yourself in the process or somebody else.
Right, right. And I think that's an important thing because we all go into our relationships with so much baggage, and we don't realize that because we're not conscious of it. And so instead of being present in this present relationship, we have our stuff from our past, the other baggage that's in this relationship right now that we're bringing into this.
Yeah.
And so it's so important for us, whether you're in a relationship or not, you still have to do your work. You still have to do your self work. Even if your relationship is going well, continue to do your work, So don't get too excited, like, oh, everything's great. Continue to have you time, meditating, yoga, dancing, whatever it is. It's important to have you time, Let me tell you,
2000.
I've been watching Black is King over and over, and I'm telling you, I just been moving, dancing, because dancing is therapy. And
Yes.
it's like when I watch it, it's like, how do you just watch this and not move? So I gotta watch it. Like I had to literally sit down and watch it and like not move and be in my bed so I could actually see everything and hear. But then the rest of the time, it's like I'm moving because it's like, it's important to move our body. And our bodies have cellular memory, so we hold on to a lot of trauma
Yep.
in the body. So through movement, through dance, through shaking, it's releasing those traumas. So dance, shake, have fun, and you're healing yourself as you're doing those different things.
Every day, every single day. And Black is King, that was curated for Black and Brown folks. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was made specifically with a soundtrack and a theme and visuals to really invigorate a certain spirit, a certain energy. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
part in that. It's natural. Get it. Get you some. Yeah.
Yes. And my family's from Haiti, so we have that Caribbean blood. So whenever I hear music with the drums
Drums
and that
come
moving,
through.
my hips be ready to just start moving. Like I'd be like, "Hips, what you doing?" My hips be like gyrating, and I'm like, "Whoa, okay."
They're like, what are you doing? Get into this. Yes.
Exactly.
Exactly. But it's so true. Like you said, we store so much in our bodies because our bodies are wise, right? Our bodies are wise. They're so enriched. They are experienced. And abstraction is actually something that happens from a place of privilege. I just learned this recently, right? So back in the day when people had others taking care of their bodies, bathing them and all that good stuff, they had the ability to abstract. They had the ability to think and to just have these really ponderous conversations because they weren't tending to the body, they were only tending to the mind. And so the more that you can remember that we are a fully integrated system, we can say, hey, I'm in my head. How can I get outside of my head? Maybe that's art. Maybe that's dancing. Maybe that's journaling. Maybe it's yelling or crying. Do it.
Right.
But staying in your head, you're actively avoiding the body. And he, she, it, they needs your touch, your essence, your reminder that they're important.
So true. So true. And I think that's what everyone wants, to feel important, to feel heard, to feel loved. So it's like, how can we do that? How can we make ourselves feel heard as well? How can we make ourselves feel loved? And how can we, in that partner, open that space so that we can hear our partner, so that we can love our partner? And, we are love in our essence, but we forget that. And so how do we allow that light, that love to shine?
Yeah. And that's a tricky one because for some people, there has to be the convincing that they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you deserve. And so I'm very clear, and I tell people at the end of each session, like, take good care of yourself and be kind to yourself. At, at some point in time, we have to acknowledge that perhaps we're navigating life with our most necessary and creative coping mechanisms. And for some of that, it looks like anger, it looks like sadness, it looks like loneliness, but that's because it's the way we've learned how to be. And again, once you have this awareness that, hey, I'm not bad or wrong, this is how I'm showing up, this is how I'm feeling, then we can say, how can we invite a bit more compassion to the self? How can we invite a bit more clarity or courage or joy into your being? And it takes work. So I never want to kid somebody like, oh, tomorrow you'll be good. Brene Brown and Daniel LaPorte and Iyanla, all amazing.
Right.
It takes work, and the work is never done. And that's the beauty. And like you said, 35, you was like, wow.
Yeah.
And now you look back and you're like, man, I'm different. As you should be. Right. You're different every 7 years, they say, right?
That's what they say, yeah.
It's never too late. It's never too late, but why not start now? And tune into that. Don't judge yourself. You're like, I don't want to start now because I'm too scared. Oh, okay, cool. Let's tune into those fears. Like, what's that about? Where did they come from? I want to hear the origin story as if it was the X-Men of where did you learn and what reinforced these fears for you. So I like to do a deep dive, because when I say self-love, self-compassion, confidence, it sounds abstract. And for some people, it sounds easy. And for some, it sounds like just sizzle words.
Yeah.
What is that?
So let me ask you. So I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions. We're gonna start with, okay, I want to ask you, what tips, like 2 or 3 tips, could you give if there's a couple that's in the quarantine right now and they're struggling? They're like trying to like not do everything to not kill themselves, each other, or themselves. What are like 2 or 3 tips you would say to that couple?
All right. 2 or 3 tips. Struggling not
to kill each other.
Bless their cat.
I'm sorry, I didn't tell you there was going to be a quiz.
It's okay. In my head, I'm putting it together though, because here's the biggest thing. I just want to invite you to have some recognition that at some point in time you liked this person and you probably pop off on this person because you care so much. And so being able to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're not here to hurt you, right? So that means we have to check ourselves. I also want to ask, how much kind words do you say to your partner? Don't worry about, well, I'll do it if they'll do it or they don't. Who cares, right? Like, how kind are you to your partner? And do you make an effort to be near them, to be around them, to touch them, like we were saying, right? So number 1, we have to check ourselves, treat each other kindly, be nice to each other. And number 2, do you ask for what you want? Do you assume that they should know? If you love me, you would. No, nobody's mind reader, right? So are you specific? Do you ask for what you want? And the key to communication is speaking in a way where you can be heard. So in your articulation, is that clear? Is it concrete? And so they sound like really small, obvious things, perhaps, but they're not used. That's why we keep the cycle going.
Yeah, that's so true. Those are really good points. And I think a lot of times people think that they're asking for what they want, but they're not, or they're stating in a way like the way you said it. Like they're like, oh, this person should know me by now. They should know what I want. No,
they're more confused.
Yeah, people are so busy dealing with their stuff. They can't be a psychic, so you have to explain what you want. And then sometimes you explain what you want out of anger or because you're in a fight, and then you're like, well, you didn't do this, and then this. That's not the same as expressing what your needs are, what your desires are when you're in a fit of anger and rage, because it's coming out wrong. The person is not going to hear you, and then you're just going to keep fighting. So so I think a lot of people don't think about that and think, well, I told them, but how did you tell them? How did you express yourself?
Yeah.
And did you truly express what you really want and what you really need? Because a lot of times we don't really know what we want or what we need, So
simple communication exercises And honestly, I can spend a whole hour long session, maybe more, on a mirroring exercise. And the whole concept is, did I say what I meant to say? Because that happens all the time. Like, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't say it like that. And then did you receive the sentiment of what I needed to say? I didn't, I thought you meant da da da, right? So some of this is going to be skill rich. So you have plenty of time. You're going to get quality time, which is different than screen time
Right.
and date night, right? Watch some videos on YouTube.
Right.
Check something like together. Check something out that will enrich your relationship. And everything is a consideration and invitation. It's not a hard yes or no. And if your partner says something that you're like, oh, I really want this, and they're like, I'm okay. That's not a judgment on you. It's not cataclysmic. You all are simply tuning into your yeses and nos, and we want to be respectful of each other's yeses and nos. It doesn't mean anything about you. It's where they're at. Let's see them.
Yeah.
Yeah, different.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
So so next question. What are like 2 or 3 tips that you could give to a single woman who's like, she's like, oh my God, I'm ready to be in a relationship. I can't find nobody. What's wrong with me? What would you say? What would be a couple tips you would give?
All my single ladies. Or my single guys.
Oh, my single ladies,
Single people.
hands up.
So I'm going to say some contrasting information. Okay. Everybody's on the apps right now. Everybody's on the apps. So please do not trust the apps. Okay. But do go on the apps, right? Go on the ones and flirt. Get into the habit of talking with people, because you're not going to meet them tonight, right? There's no Netflix and chill. There's none of that. So just get in a good habit of checking in with yourself. What kind of conversations do you want to have? How confident do you feel talking with people? You can video chat them on most of these apps now too. And so I would just say, get into the habit of flirting. Get really clear about self-pleasure too, if you want to, right? Like there's a whole vessel here that you get to determine and discern when you want to turn it on or turn it off or nourish and lather it. And so do that. But I think it's a definite opportunity to use the virtual world to still employ some skills that we're too nervous to do sometimes in the real world, right? We're too worried about the presentation or the rapping. No, you get to be whoever you want to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. I like that. I like that. And so that same question for men, if the single men, what would you say for them?
Well, I need a master class for single. I think single men, I want to say this with kindness and compassion. I think a lot of single men struggle with honesty because they want to present the best foot forward. But a lot of guys also really want what they want. And to be quite frank, if you just came with that, a lot more women would be able to discern that healthily, right? So it's the same concept. What do you actually want when you engage someone, when you talk to someone? Do you just want Netflix and chill? And the buzzword for Netflix and chill these days is actually vibes, like cool vibes.
Oh, really?
That's the word, right? So do you just want something sexual? Do you want a business connection? Like hop off the apps where you're dating then. Like go to the source. And so that's the thing. It's just be really clear about what you're doing and then do that.
Yeah. So now, what would you say to the person? Last question, the last quiz, and you're doing really well, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. It's my living.
Like if I wasn't doing well, I wouldn't be great at my job. I do have to say you're fortunate because this is the first time I'm giving a quiz.
I'll take it.
So what would you say to that person, male, female, whoever, who, you were talking about conversation, talking first, texting, getting to know. What if that person has a block in the sense that, they get on this app, but they don't know what to say? Someone messaged them, but now they don't know what to say. And it's just like, hi, and then that's it, hi. And there's no conversation flowing. What would you say? Yeah. What tips would you give about that?
What do you want to know about them? What do you need them to know about you? And if in doubt, Google first date questions, right? Gottman actually has the Gottman app. I won't go into who they are and whatever, but you can find the free app, Gottman Card Deck, and they have this thing called Love Maps, right? And so it's basically a bunch of questions that when you're in a relationship, ideally you should know it about your partner. And so you can use that. You can use websites where they just have fun questions and just pick ones that actually intrigue you, right? Um, if you're asking people about their business, it's not how much they make. Like, what are you passionate about? What do you enjoy? What's been the best part of your day is what I like to text people as opposed to how was your day? Good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. Even if it sucks,
Yeah.
good. You know, so
Yeah.
tuning in to getting details and the art of being in a conversation as opposed to the distractions or the obligations that we have.
Mm-hmm. Love it. How do you spell Gottman deck?
Gottman
Mm-hmm.
card deck. The app is free, I believe. Um, they're just the ones that come off the top of my head, but you can literally Google first date questions too, and see what shows up. What do you want to ask somebody? And I think that also goes back to when we're talking about self development. How do you answer some of these questions?
Mm-hmm.
I want someone who's
Right.
really cultured and well versed when I'm having good conversations with folks, intimacy, relationally, socially, with my friends too. But that means
Mm-hmm.
I have to know what happened in Beirut. I have to
Right.
know the importance of what's going on in Syria. If you don't know these things, then that's okay. It's an
Mm-hmm.
invitation to learn more.
Right. Right. I like that. I like that. I Naila has a question, but first, it's interesting because a while back, some time ago, I did something like this. I had got this little interview thing, these questionnaires to ask,
Mhm.
and it even talked about playing a little game with your partner. So so it could be like this kind of like quiz, true and false, and different ways to get the questions, and it made it really well. Like our conversation flowed. And one of the things that I learned here, being in Brazil, which I like, people don't ask how much you make. People don't ask, what do you do? Where do you work? Like, that's the last thing that they ask. Like, people here in Brazil that I meet, we have so many conversations about what do you enjoy doing? Like so many different questions other than the questions that we've been trained, like we need to know this before we go on a date. We need to try to figure out by asking what do they do, how long have they been there, to try to figure out how much they're making,
It's
you
a value
know.
exchange. It's a transaction at that point.
Yeah, it is a transaction, and so you're not really allowing yourself to get to know that person, and you're just like, okay, you have in your mind what you want somebody that makes X amount of money, who's going to give you this, but then will that make you happy? You can get all of that, but will you really be happy? Will you be in love with this person? Will you know this person? Will there be a connection?
Yeah.
So
I tell you, I think we have a real false sense of closeness. And I don't understand because Catfish has been a show for years. People,
mhm.
and
Yes.
but I do want to invite us to not get so caught up in wanting to be close that we just ignore the signs, that we don't ask deep questions and we don't invite the time for intimacy because dating has been replaced by swipe culture.
Yes. Yeah. So Naila asks, what if as a woman you are more visually stimulated rather than physically?
Oh, I don't quite know if I fully
Mm-hmm.
understand the question, but I'm going to try my best. And Naila, you will let me know if there's a follow up. If you are more visually stimulated than physically, then I would say get as much that you can that your eyes can preview. What do you enjoy? And break it down. What do you enjoy that brings you pleasure, that brings
Mm-hmm.
you joy, that brings you arousal? How can we interface with different tactile is touch, but different, I can't think of the word, but making it different, right? If you're looking at it in certain ways, how can we switch it up for you,
By using
right?
the different senses?
Using the different senses, but also kind of
Oh,
adding a different step or level to it, right?
mm-hmm.
So The only thing I can think of is if you really like, I'm just going to use art as an example. That's all I can think of. Maybe you enjoy art. Well, foil art is very different than watercolor and canvas and oil, if that makes sense, right? If you enjoy
Mhm.
looking at your partner, it's different when they are naked. It is different when they have lingerie. It is different when they are exercising. Like, I want to
Mhm.
know what is the breadth of how you get to enjoy what turns you on or it brings you joy.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't know if that answers it,
Yeah,
but
Naila, can you clarify your question just to make sure? Because I think also, we are visual beings. So the first thing we see is the visual. You know, for me, that doesn't mean that's the end all be all. Like I love an intellectual person. If you're gonna stimulate my mind and you're gonna make me laugh,
you're a
that's
unicorn.
very important. I'm interested. But visually, what does that mean? Like, for me, physical doesn't necessarily matter. But then physical could be affected by the visual. So I want to understand that question more clearly. But from having a conversation with a person, getting to know the person more, that I start to like them, visually they're going to appear differently. Like
They're
I have
aesthetically
I have
appealing.
literally met guys that I was not attracted to, that I was like, oh, he's ugly.
Yep.
Then like we're having these stimulating conversations, he's making me laugh, and then 2 days later I look at him, I'm like, oh, he's fine. Like he's fine. And next thing you know, so it changes for me personally. And I think that it does, once you get to know a person, their looks actually begin to change. So,
It's true. There's a whole movie, Shallow Hal.
mhm,
A whole movie based on that whole concept where he sees Gwyneth Paltrow and everyone sees her as very, very voluptuous, I'll say. But he
mhm,
sees her inside, and then there's this woman who's very, very beautiful, but she's kind of a nasty character. And so he
mhm,
sees her differently. And so I think that concept is just the fact that yes, we can have attraction, but how committed are we to that attraction and what we
mhm,
need from that compared to does that also soothe our emotional needs as well?
mhm.
And sometimes it's a percentage, right?
Yeah.
And if you get your emotional needs met, it's like, oh my God, like who cares? Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. So this was good. I love this, and I love your excitement, Desiree, to answer these questions and to get a quiz. By the way, you got 100% on this quiz.
Yes. Thank you.
So, Naila, if you want to clarify the question, or maybe we answered it, I don't know. But I want to thank Desiree for coming out again. This was amazing. Can you
Yes.
tell people again how to reach you, how to contact you?
Of course. My website is my name, DesireeNRobinson.com. And on Instagram, I am sexologist_Desiree. Desire with an E.
Yes, nice. Yeah, so be sure to, add her on Instagram, check her out. This was great. I really loved everything that you said. It made sense. I agreed with, I always love it when it flows. And I'm not like, I don't agree with this, because I'm the type of person who I will say what I think and what I feel. So I have disagreed with people, but I say it lovingly and nicely
Yes, of
with a
course.
smile on my face. But so yeah, but I feel it, like, I felt everything you were saying. It was just a great conversation. And I think there's so many different things, we have to be intentional. It's important for us to be intentional and conscious in our relationships
Mhm.
and what we're doing. It's important for us to do the work, on ourselves, and constantly doing the work to grow
Yeah.
within our relationships. So I don't know if there's any last thing after this quiz, I don't know if there's any last thing that you didn't get to say that you want to share, that you'd like to leave people with.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I love to share with people is to be kind to yourself. Find how you can have compassion for yourself and others, and really find things that you love about yourself. Part of this is easy because I was staring at myself, and I love to look at myself, right? And so being able to put yourself in the position where you get to choose how you fall in love with yourself and others, and maybe love or like is too strong, be okay, right? Today I'm okay that my legs work. Let's start there. Let's start somewhere and be kind to yourself.
Yes. And you are beautiful. So
It helps.
yes, it helps. It helps.
Oh, thank you
Yeah.
so much. This was a joy, pleasure, and I hope that your audience receives such abundance from getting to know themselves and for having you as their guide.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. This was great. So I enjoyed this, and everything that you said, is spot on. Love yourself, enjoy yourself, grab a mirror, look at yourself. As a matter of fact, do that now. As soon as we get off, as soon as we end this live, grab a mirror or go to the bathroom or grab a compact and just look at yourself and say beautiful things. All the things that you would want your partner to say to you, say it to yourself.
Okay.
You're beautiful. You're so smart. You're amazing. Everything that you want to hear from your partner, say it to yourself. So thank you guys for coming on. You can follow me on Instagram at prandata_prim_tantra, Twitter or Facebook at Renee Adolph, Patreon. Support me on Patreon at Prandata Prim. I have memberships there from $5 up to $50. That's just basically your way of supporting me. But as a way of support and me thanking you, I give you tons of great tips on Tantra, sacred sexuality. Every Sunday, I have self-exploration Sundays where I teach you, give you tips to self-explore. Then on Mondays, I have Monday meditations. So Mondays, we're doing meditations. And Tuesdays are Tantric Tuesdays, where for this month of August, I'm actually sharing personal stories of my Tantra journey, how I got into Tantra, different experiences that I experienced with Tantra. Sometimes I do a book on Tantra where we talk about excerpts and on a different book. So, each month is something different for the Tantric Tuesdays, but you can join me there. And on Saturdays, I have a free meditation at 11 a.m. So join me on Saturdays at 11 a.m. where we do meditate, just really to kind of get grounded, get connected to help you during this time of COVID virus, Mondays, I do specific tantric meditations at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so on Mondays is a tantric meditation, and we're doing tantric active meditations so you can get to learn to connect to your energy, channel that energy, feel the energy moving through you, and balancing the chakras, our energy centers. So that's what I have. And I got two more things coming up. Just want to share with you guys. I have Goddess Rising, August 22nd and 23rd, where it's just for goddesses, up to 15 women maximum. We want this to be an intimate group. And we're just going to be sharing, going through different exercises, having intimate conversations, teaching moves to be sexy so you can become a goddess. Like Beyonce, get into that Oshun energy, So let's do it. And then August 29th, I am actually having a nude workshop. That's going to be for 2 hours starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I believe 8 p.m. Yeah. And we're going to be talking about nudity and sexuality and becoming comfortable in your skin. And that's called Return to Eden. Being comfortable in our skin, in our nakedness, our nudity, in it all. So I got those things coming up. So hit me up, check me out on my website, www.prandataprim.com for that information. And I got, Yaz said one of the leading couples therapists in the USA, Gottman. Oh, so Gottman is one of the leading couples therapists.
They have a big name. They have a big name.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Yaz. So thank you for all those who came on, who asked questions, who commented. Love you guys. Have a wonderful night. That's it.
Bye.
Bye.